Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, I'm John Kunschner. I lead the investment banking team at Landmark Ventures. Great to be here. Thanks for joining us, guys. Here with Ulrich Quay of BMW and Oren Betzaleli of Harman. We're going to talk about the innovation in the automotive, smart car, autonomous, electric car world, but just get us started with a quick introduction, and then just to get the juices flowing, tell me one thing you're really excited about for 2019 in your industry.
Well, I'm excited about a lot of things happening. First of all, sorry for my voice, but just 2 days ago I only could whisper, so that's a big progress.
Sounds great.
But normally I sound a little different. So I'm not excited about my health right now, but I'm excited. But maybe just briefly about BMW Ventures. Maybe not everyone knows. We have a 500 million euro fund. We have about 39 portfolio companies and investing throughout automotive, transportation, mobility, anything that's relevant for a big company like BMW. Mm-hmm. And I'm actually quite excited about a number of our investments that we made. Some of them in Israel. Always happy to pick them early and then see them become big. Just particularly. That's what I'm particularly excited about. Autonomous, very exciting, I think, as well. A lot of money in it. You wonder, 80 players that are working on their own technology and with very different approaches. And I'm excited to see how this plays out. Nobody knows.
Very cool.
What excites me in 2019? Well, maybe I start by saying that I joined Harman. Harman is a tier one supplier in the automotive industry, working with BMW and many other OEMs in the space. And I joined Harman through the acquisition of Red Band. Red Band was acquired, I think, about 4 years ago, something like that. And it did not come from automotive. It came from the mobile industry. But Harman acquired us on the ticket of automotive technology, of updating cars. Since then, since the acquisition, we had 24 deals with 24 different car makers. And what excites me in 2019 is that this is the year that most of these deals will get into what's called SOP, start of production. So we've done a lot of investment, a lot of integration, a lot of projects, but this is the year, this is the money time for us. That scares me also, by the way, but yeah, really excitement.
That's great. I want to key in on this 500 startups in Israel topic and get your guys' opinion. So 5-10 years ago, the concept of a startup saying, hey, I'm going to be an automotive startup was like, you're crazy. It takes 5-8 years to get into the design cycle, and by the time you're going to run out of money. So what's changed? Why all of a sudden is this such an attractive market for companies to start, to invest in? You as a major corp, owned by Samsung, you're still dealing with multiple year cycles and struggling to get the point of actually producing revenue. What's going on in the market that you think, is it going to end badly? Is it going to end well? Are we going to have lots of mobilize, or is it going to be more challenging? You want to start?
Yeah, it's true. 10 years ago, VCs were not interested, long sales cycles. Mm-hmm. And then it turned around. So you should better ask those who had those concerns in the past. When we have always, we are investing financially and strategically, but we are investing also for our sole LP BMW. So we believe that you can build an interesting business for automotive, but there were some who were not interested, and now you see all those big checks being written by Sequoia and others in trucking, autonomous trucking companies. Sequoia investing in Aurora, so that didn't happen before. And I think they're all excited by the big market. There's always I don't know how many trillion, but some $1 trillion is the size of the market. They expect that a lot of the money that's being now spent on vehicles is being spent on mobility going forward. So you don't see often those big markets opening up. And the interesting thing is, how quickly does this happen? Nobody knows. There's still the challenge of sales cycles. We have some portfolio companies, sometimes if you miss a certain window, your technology is only ready, let's say, a month after a cutoff date, they won't consider you. So you have to wait for another 2 or 3 years. That's a fact. Yep. And that's sometimes frustrating. So you need supporters, you need the money to wait for the next cycle, and you need to have the patience with your portfolio companies that sometimes they're just at the right time with the wrong customer, and that sometimes things take a little longer than you would have hoped. So there's a lot of excitement, but there's also still challenges, I would say.
Do you have an opinion?
Sure, I have an opinion of everything. First of all, I think what changed was the actual car makers, the OEMs themselves. In the past, they used to work in a very rigid, hierarchical supplier, structure. They have tier 1 suppliers, tier 2 suppliers. They were not that open to startups at all. They would never go to a startup to say, hey, let's do a POC or something like that. That changed. I don't know if it changed in the last 5 years or maybe 6 or 7, but definitely changed. I think the next thing, or the second thing, is that everybody understands now that this is probably the most exciting, innovative industry in the world. The number of revolutions that are going on in the automotive industry, the car as it was 10 years ago and the car as it will be 10 years from now, is completely different. And this revolution drives innovation, drives startups, drives investments. And you asked specifically about Israel. I think if you look, you mentioned 500 companies. I don't know how many of those 500 started as automotive, and maybe just like Redben, but maybe then pivoted to automotive. But definitely Israel is becoming one of the top innovation centers for automotive, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, well, I think from my opinion, it's not really about the car, right? They don't make any cars in Israel, but they do AI really well. They do cybersecurity really well. They do connectivity really well, and that's what your innovation's all about. So another question. So, OEM, tier 1 suppliers, the relationship's always been interesting. How have you seen as innovations come in, as autonomous starts to, electric, the 5G as it plays into the car? How do you view that relationship changing over time, and who takes, BMW's taken a lot of this stuff internally, and you're going to own it versus relying on a supplier to solve some of those challenges? I'm just curious your opinions of how that plays out over the next, 5-10 years with this type of innovation in the industry.
When I see, typically they still use their tier 1s for industrialization, right? It's not, if you have, I think there are about 80,000 parts in a vehicle, and you would be crazy to take care of everything yourself. You lose, focus. But there will be some things that they want to own. And let's take the autonomous vehicle stack. There will be OEMs who say, I want to own this. I don't want to license it from someone. I want to build this. I want to fully understand that. And if anything goes wrong, I want to, go to the person and tell him what's going on. I want to fix this, which you can't do when you just license something nice from someone else. And I think that is probably, so they have a core center of your automotive product, will be owned by the OEM. And since, the core expertise of OEMs is probably not software, you see an increasing importance for company playing a part of that, either being acquired to make them part of the OEM or having a very close relationship. So I think that's, for me, the main thing that's changing. There are certain parts of the vehicle where ownership of the OEM becomes more important, when in the past they didn't mind where the brake pads came from. It didn't really matter. And now they are key components. But on the other hand, there always have been key components as well. So for BMW, the engine was always a key component that we would never buy from someone else. So in a way, it's not entirely new, but it may be, it's a new sector that didn't exist before, where you have ownership from an OEM.
Yeah, interesting. You thoughts?
So Harman bought 3 companies in Israel. The first one was Iron Road, doing machine learning, image processing, and so on. But the other 2, TowerSec, which brought cybersecurity into automotive, and Redben, which brought remote management control and software update, I think represent a very significant change that relates to what you asked. If I look at over-the-air updates specifically, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we would be considered a tier 2 supplier. Okay, so if the OEM would like to have the software updated, he would go to the tier 1 and say, hey, make sure your software is updatable. Same for cybersecurity. The owner would go to the tier 1 and will say, make sure your component is completely secured. Nowadays, we see a huge change. The change is that finally OEMs understand that they cannot manage that in the tier 1 siloed approach. If you want to have your car secured, it's not the job of a specific component supplier. It's much more strategic. So you need to have an architecture, a strategy. You need to look at all the components, how do they relate to each other, how the data is collected, sent to the cloud, who is doing the analysis. This cannot be the job of a specific tier 1. Same goes for OTA. You want your car to be updatable, it cannot be the job of one tier 1 supplier. It has to be a very strategic, cross-vehicle, multiple ECUs job, again, strategy, full architecture, on vehicle and on the cloud. And again, that cannot be done by one supplier. So they are changing now, and that they're now starting to see beyond the specific supplier approach into what's, how the full vehicle is impacted, and that is a big change for OEMs. It's changing with their complete mindset of how they deal with technology in the car.
Yep, interesting. What kind of car do you drive?
Well, I've never had any other vehicles.
Specifically, what kind of car? Like, which kind of BMW do you drive?
I drive currently here with a BMW i3, which is a very exciting car.
i3,
one of the most fun cars to drive, actually.
Electric, right?
Yes, an electric battery electric.
What kind of car do you drive?
I have a plug-in hybrid Volvo XC60.
Plug-in hybrid, got it. BMW's always been known for high performance and on one side of things, amazing engines, amazing experience, electric cars coming in, autonomy next, right? How do you focus as a major car company, I'm going to come to you as well, when you're pulled by, when I get in my car, I want it to be like this experience, versus I want it to be electric, versus I want it to be a great performance car, versus autonomy and ADAS and all these things, because there's a lot of different kind of emotions that are involved in driving. And as a company, I'm curious, how do you prioritize? Is it just having kind of different lines of cars that address different types of customers? Because our kids may not even own a car, right? And so I'm just curious your view of how do you go about a strategy in that kind of market? And then from your side, same thing, kind of.
I think it's the current strategy that you see for BMW and also for other OEMs that they want to, for them, electric drivetrain will be just one option of a drivetrain, and we will build our 340s, M3s, continue to do that for those who enjoy driving them and buying them, and we will also offer them as a battery electric vehicle because in some geographies that's the preference of the people, and some it isn't because it's too cold or it's not necessary to do it. It's too cumbersome. So we will, have the full lineup, which makes the whole production process and development process more complicated, obviously, because you have to have one infrastructure that allows you to have, traditional drivetrains and electric drivetrains. But they figured it out, and now we are rolling out basically electric vehicles with most or even all of our models going forward, and I think that's a good strategy. People. Like the brand, they want to stay with it, and electric driving is a lot of fun, right? We own an X5 and an i3, so sometimes the X5 is better with a long range. Sometimes my i3, when I go to Redwood City from Mountain View, the i3 is totally fine, and even if I go much further, it's totally fine. So I enjoy having that mix, and I enjoy driving both. And it's, as an OEM, it's just important to have different options that serves everyone's needs.
Okay. So variety, you have an opinion?
So first of all, I think there is a change in what consumer look for when they look at a car, right? If in the past it was horsepower, design maybe, now more and more people are looking into the technology, right? And the technology is what drives the revolution in the automotive industry. And our strategy is aligned on those elements of revolution. We talk about connectivity, everything that has to do with it, cybersecurity, cloud, remote management. This is a huge part of Harman strategy today. And the second has to do with the user experience in the car. If it's, how will infotainment system look in the future? Will be a full cockpit? What kind of user interface? Will you have to touch buttons and to, use your hands, or will you talk to your car? Maybe gestures, maybe eye movement, maybe the car will react to you by changing the shape of the wheel or something. So this is another strategic focus of our company. Another one is, of course, ADAS and autonomous. This is something that we're doing together with Samsung. So along those revolutionary aspects of this industry, this is how our strategy is aligned. Very, very focused for how it will look like in the next 5-10 years.
Okay. Let's talk about autonomous. I think, in my opinion, the perception of autonomous driving took a couple big hits last year. I don't think from a technology development, maybe it did, but I'm just curious the opinion of what do you think needs to happen this year, next year to kind of get back on track? Is it a test that's successful? Is it getting pre-planned routes in play at more places that people see them at airports otherwise? What is your strategy to as a company to ensure autonomous is successful? Or what do you think needs to happen for it to be successful?
Yeah, there was some kind of reality check. So one of the current big full stack providers told me once a couple of weeks ago, it's easy to get to 99.99%,
Right.
but it's very difficult to get this additional 0.01%, which is essential. You cannot just say, well, your car works fine 99.99%. People would expect for the car to work all the time. And that's something, hasn't been totally solved, I think. From yesterday, I talked to a very prominent Silicon Valley AV engineer who was 10 years ago. His strategy was to use the approach that you can solve any situation with computation, and you can basically think about what could happen and then prepare for it. And yesterday he told me, I changed my mind. I was wrong. And I was very surprised by that. He says it's going to take a long, long time because the current approach of trying to solve every single problem that exists and then prepare for that is I think, I'm not sure whether that's going to work. And he was one of the drivers of that approach, which is interesting in my perspective. So OEMs, are at similar, at different stages, but in a way similar. Most of them have a solution, a level 3 solution, in about 2 or 3 years. And then they have announced something a couple of years later, which should be kind of an urban autonomous vehicle experience. They always said it's going to take a long time. Some people didn't think so. So maybe that's an occasion where OEMs were maybe right. We will see. But they always said it takes a long time and it's extremely challenging. And they didn't overpromise on it. And so far they've been a little more conservative. But it looks like they were not that wrong. But we will see. Maybe something exciting comes up next year and I'm wrong.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think it will take time. What happened last year was really a dent in the PR of the AV industry. It didn't stop. It won't stop. It won't even slow down. It will continue. Companies will continue to invest. Technologies will continue to evolve. And I don't even think a successful test will change anything. Maybe what will change is that we will see a commercial use of autonomous vehicles. It's probably not going to be a passenger car regular that you and I will buy, not in the next 10, 15, 20 years even, but we'll start seeing trucks driving by themselves. We start seeing maybe shuttles, controlled environments, well-known scenarios, but real life. That's the thing that when we start seeing those, it will start to move this industry forward. But again, this is long, long time until it will be mass market.
Very good. I think we're out of time, but so thank you very much for your thoughts. Great to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you.